Hello, everyone. Welcome to our developer deep dive. Today, we're going to be talking all about Scene Graph. It's nice to see you all. Thanks for coming in. Today, we're trying something a little different. We'll be streaming to our Fortnite Create YouTube, Unreal Engine YouTube, and Unreal Engine Twitch today, just to kind of spread some more love across the community, reach some more people. So it's good to have you all in. We're going to take a few minutes and just let some more people trickle in. We ran a few minutes late today due to a couple technical stuff, but we're here. We made it. So yeah, welcome. How are y'all doing today? Hello, hi. How you doing? I see you cited Sloths, Best Sponge, JS Films. Welcome. Got MSK Titan on the other side. Noise. Hi, Trash Bird. Welcome, everybody. Where's Tina? I kidnapped her. No, I'm just kidding. Tina's one of my favorite humans. Tina's here. She's doing the UE side work right now. Hello. Hi, Siggy FR. Welcome. Hi, and I should introduce myself too. Hi, Unreal Engine channels. For those who don't know me, my name's Shane Callie Meyer. I'm the community manager for creators over on Fortnite Creative and UFN. And we have a couple great guests here to talk about the newest tool, Scene Graph, in UEFN today. And we thought it would be interesting for both the creator community and the developer side to learn a bit about it since it's so new. So we're excited to chat about that. I'm going to go ahead and let everyone know we're going good, but get cozy, welcome in, say hi to everyone. It's so great to see you. And yeah, we'll go. I'm gonna let everyone know we're chugging along. Okay, cool. Just live. There we go. All right, cool. Welcome. If you have any questions for today's stream, by the way, please put question in brackets so that our lovely moderator team can see it and we can see it. We will be pulling those and answering as we go. And we hope to be able to bring some more insight into this new tool. I know there's two sides. There's people that are like, wow, Scene Graph is so cool. We saw it talked about at GDC. So exciting. And then there's others like, oh, I have no idea what Scene Graph is. And today we're going to dive into that to bring a little bit more insight there. Thank you, Crimson, so much for sharing that. Okay, cool. Sounds like we're all good. Oh, Tina's talking to me. She heard my my comments to her. Love Tina. Okay, cool. Sweet. She knows she's missed. All right. Well, since we're a little bit behind, much easier using Unreal. Really, TBN. Very interesting. I'm very curious to hear as we go through Scene Graph, by the way, what you all think. Creators, are you excited to use it? Developers on the UE side, how does this compare to the tools you use? What do you think? Be honest. We want to hear your feedback and your thoughts. We're super excited. And if you have any in-depth questions, we have the team here to talk about it. That's right, Tom Jank. Let's go. Sweet. Okay. We already got a question by Pat Pat. Thank you for entering that in, Pat Pat. Our wonderful mods will snag that for us while we do our intro here. But well, without further ado, I guess we can get started. Thank you so much, Curtis and Rami, for coming today and being part of our stream. As you can see, the community is very excited to hear more about Scene Graph, and we're so thankful to have your time today. So I would love just in however many words you would like to share, for you to share a little bit of your backstory and what you've been working on here at Epic, just so the audience can get to know you a little better. And I'll popcorn it to Rami first.
Yeah, hi everyone. It's really exciting to be here to be able to talk, especially with Curtis, about the scene graph system and share a bit about what we've been doing internally at Epic. So for myself, I've been in the video game industry for 15 years, working on certain open world games that you know from Ubisoft that were very stabby, not to mention them. So we had internal technology at Ubisoft that was very internal. We didn't use Unreal or whatever, but we still had a system that was very similar to the scene graph. And we could even say that the scene graph-like systems are an industry standard that sadly Unreal was lacking very much. I mean, for anyone familiar with a traditional engine instead of UEFN, we have the level instances which are very heavy but very flexible, which are not available in UEFN. So instead of opening the door to those multitudes of issues, potentially introducing that to UEFN, why not just introduce the full thing, the full blown new system that's going to allow for a lot more flexibility? And yeah, that's what I've been focusing on a lot, is working on the prefab example that we're going to show you and walk through today, like how some of the content was built, and as well as introducing or teasing a bit of the new features that are upcoming. Curtis?
Oh, thanks everybody. Yeah, I'm Curtis Schmidt. I'm framework technical director for the Unreal Engine, and I'm also the technical lead for the creation of this new scene graph. My background, kind of the same. I've been in the industry about 15 years, I think. I've been at Epic 2 years, going on 3 years, and before this, I was one of the leads of the Frostbite game engine at EA. I was there for many, many years, working on all sorts of projects and internal tech. And yeah, the scene graph is kind of the culmination of a lot of work that we've all done in the past. We've had, Remy mentioned he's worked on systems like this. I've built a few game frameworks in my time as well, and we kind of got the best of the industry together to start thinking about what the next 10 or 20 years of game frameworks in Unreal Engine. And eventually our plan is to open this up so that it can be potentially an open specification for the open metaverse, so others could participate and we can build something that is simple enough and standardizable enough that we could share all the ideas very widely. So that's kind of the impetus behind why we are doing such a big change to the engine and what we're pushing for here. So this is just the start, but we'll start to see more and more of these features roll out as we reach parity with our existing tech and start to push forward even past that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Curtis. And everyone missed it because we were kind of cut away, but Remy did this magical for scene graph and what's to
Metaverse!
come. Metaverse. Thank you for that. We've also got a comment here that says your hair, Curtis, is very metaverse, very meta human rather, which is a compliment in the UE side. Tina
It's
is
all
also a
CG
meta
from
human.
NVIDIA, actually.
You know what? I'd believe it. It's outstanding. Okay, cool. So we're gonna dive in. We've already got a few questions. So the first big question being, what does scene graph do? So I'm gonna throw it to y'all. If we could talk a little bit about, what is scene graph for those of us, especially the ones who haven't heard yet about it, or they've only heard whispers, but they're not sure. What is kind of like the TLDR on what scene graph can do?
Yeah. So scene graph, in some ways, like it might be the wrong term. This is always a problem in the industry. Naming things is very, very hard. So a scene graph in like the longest term within video games is basically a connection of all of the renderable things in the world. In our case, we're using it a little more loosely. So scene graph is at the core level of verse, basically the building blocks that we're going to have for building all content in the engine. So we have some very simple concepts and you can stitch them together, bring in a mesh and a material, and you want to assign a sound to it, and then you want to write scripts against that, or you want to walk around the scene through code and say, well, find me all the houses and then I want to light them on fire. We can do those types of things by giving you a common platform and a common way to do that across the board. So the scene graph is basically the way that we structure all of that very basic content. And then you can go at fine grain detail and manipulate all the pieces you want through your game. So if you want to build something complicated, you have every lever to pull that you could possibly want to pull. That's at least the plan long term. And I think
Wow.
Remy can probably do better than me by showing rather than telling. So as we dive in, show you the concepts and how it works, that'll become more clear, because I know it's very abstract when I talk about it at the low level.
Awesome. Cool. We do have a question. I don't do we have an expected live date for Scene Graph if the early access goes well? I would assume not yet, but I'll let Curtis speak to that.
Yeah, we don't have one yet. We're still working on getting the feedback from the community, getting the feedback from internal developers who are using this for other projects, and making sure to push it forward and demand various components and all the features that we know we need to get this to AAA game building capabilities. So it's going to require us to stabilize a lot of audits of the components and the feedback from you. Because when we go live with this and you can start publishing, we commit to backwards compatibility of all the APIs, and we want to make sure it's very stable. We don't want every release of new features to potentially break some of the experiences that have been built. So there's no exact date ready for that yet, but we're going to keep working on it.
Sounds good. Data Kaiju says it graphs lines to scene objects. What dark sorcery is this? And I guess we'll dive into that dark sorcery with Remy here. So Remy, yeah, walk us through it a little bit. Show us what we got going on with the scene graph.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've got the editor open and we can switch to my computer.
And the van man, take it away. All right.
So we're good.
Yeah, looking good.
All right. Well, what I have here is the prefab example. So what you see here is actually a scene that was built entirely out of live UEFN. So these are all right now in the map that you can use today, are things that you can that are usable by all of you guys. Like there's nothing internal. This is all things you can use. So if you do a new project in UEFN and you actually go to feature examples, there's prefabs here, and all you do is create a new project with this, and it is going to get you in the same situation as I am here with a bare prefab example. So what we do have that I'm selecting right now is the terrain. So all of the terrain and the trees, we could have gone like and taken also all of those static meshes, but that's not really what we wanted to showcase. We really wanted to showcase how to build an environment out of reusable props, really. So if you take any element and you click on it, like any of the docks or any of the light posts, you'll see that all of these actually move together. So it is not oh, I can take this one pillar and then I have to move that and select all of these and then move. No, it actually, there's a hierarchy. And everything of those are actually saved recipes that we call prefabs that you can reuse and customize as much as you want. So what we have here is a progression of how one of those prefabs is built. So if I take more room here for the outliner and I collapse everything and we select this first light post, well, as we can see in here, what we have is, yes, a hierarchy of entities. So we have the first one, which is the root where the pivot is going to be placed. Then you can have multiple sub-entities, and it really is, again, a hierarchy. So we got one at the rotation point, so that if we decide to animate this lantern because it doesn't necessarily have the right pivot, we can actually place it properly and then use this as the pivot point. And then next in the hierarchy, you've got this stock lantern, which is actually the static mesh. So if we delve a bit further into the details of how this is all set up and go back to the root, well, on the root, we have a mesh component, which actually is this mesh, but I could actually have it being anything, a boulder, but what we want is for it to be the light post. You've got a collision component so that the player, when you play, of course, collides with it. And then you've got a parent constraint component. Now, the parent constraint component is not for editor. So if I go in here and remove the components and I still move the parent, everything is still going to move together. But if I was to were to manipulate the transform of this entity at runtime, it would not actually move that lamp along with it because there is no parenting component. So parent constraint component. So once we have this, sorry, someone's ringing. No.
You're good.
Well, we have another component, well, another entity here that actually has another mesh component for the lantern. And now what we do as we move along to those 4 different prefabs is that if I go to browse on that prefab and actually browse to prefab assets, let me just do that again so it opens where you see it. Now, this is the prefab asset, and I could drag another one, and that's what we have. Now, all of those are using the same prefab asset. I go to that one, browse to prefab asset, it's the same one. But what I did is that in each one of them, I removed some of the components so that we see the progression. So what's different in this one? The light component was added. So if I go, there's now another entity that was not there in the first one, which is the point light, and it has a point light component. So if I want, I can actually, because this is another entity with its own transform component, I can actually move the light independently from the rest of the setup. And of course, because this is in a hierarchy, I can still rotate this and the light will rotate at the proper position. Now I could move this out of the hierarchy. And now if I change the rotation point, it doesn't change that light. But if I was to move the entire post, now it does move with it. So it really is the entity hierarchy in the outliner that you can create that dictates how entities will behave towards one another. And of course, there's the additional constraint of the parent constraint component, which gets added automatically for convenience. So you don't always, I forgot to add it. I need to go back into everything and add it manually. No, you can use this.
Cool.
Now, go ahead.
I was just saying it's so cool, Remy. Thank you so much. And we're getting a lot of comments in chat. One big question we're getting a lot. I don't know if either of you can speak to this. I assume depends on the future and whatever happens, but getting a lot of questions if this will be in UE5 at some point in time.
Yeah, I can speak to it. So yes, this will be,
Great.
it's easy. Yeah,
Yay.
so we're starting in UEFN. We're going to build out the framework there, solidify it within the UEFN community, and then we start using it to build pieces of Fortnite. And after we do that, and we know that it's hitting the scaling that we need for building Fortnite itself, then we start moving it into UE and we ship it for licensees in UE as well.
Awesome. I know that's going to excite a lot of people here. Does this work with moving objects or objects on a track?
Yeah. So yeah, it will work with moving objects on a track. It's still early days, so we have to update the physics systems to work with it. There's always problems around moving objects and attached objects when it comes to how you coordinate the physics update with the attachment system, but the plan is that it will support all of those things.
There's ongoing discussions to making sure that we actually support that and a lot of the new features that are coming, like interactivity like this. Like it needs to work with the player behavior.
Makes a lot of sense. Some people are asking on the UE side, is this like USD stages kind of? I saw a couple questions like that.
So there's a lot of similarities to USD on the editor side. So yeah, USD stages and USD's layering system, you know about their layering and their opinions. The system itself here in terms of how we structure prefabs and the ability to provide fine-grained overrides within the prefab, which I'm sure Remy will get to if he keeps diving into the tech here. That's very similar to how you think about USD, and you provide more opinionated layers on top and you can lock scenes. There's a big difference in terms of how this structure actually gets represented in the simulation compared to USD. USD holds the layering all the way through the simulation because it was designed primarily as a format to really make building linear content and really complicated scenes and working in scenes really good. Whereas we are optimizing slightly more for real-time simulation, which you need in video games. So there's a lot more to how we update thousands or millions of objects in milliseconds or less, because we have to do that to make the game work. That's where the big differences start coming in between this and USD. And in the future, the plan is still that what you would do is USD can act as an interchange format. So you ingest USD, we can turn it into scene graph objects. We should even, nobody's built this, so I can't say that it'll work, but we should be able to go bidirectionally between what you see in the scene here and back into USD. None of the features make it so you couldn't do that.
Thanks for elaborating on that, Curse. Super helpful. And then one other question we've gotten a couple times. Will we eventually be able to use Scene Graph instead of devices? AKA, will Scene Graph be able to incorporate all features of the current devices?
Yeah. So the plan is that someday devices will be made using Scene Graph constructs. And so we'd be able to release new devices or things that are functionally equivalent of devices built purely out of the Scene Graph. and much more to come after that.
Awesome, cool. Well, I'll throw it back to Rami and let us dig in a little deeper here. And then thank you all for your questions. Just because we haven't answered them doesn't mean we won't get to them. Just want to make sure we're keeping on topic because I know Rami has a lot to share, and we'll do our best to get to what we can. So keep putting them in there with the brackets, and yeah, we'll do our best to answer them. Take it away, Rami.
All right. So as I was describing the different prefabs that we have here, the only difference between the last two is that we added, of course, on the same light entity, a particle system component, which enables those fireflies that you see over here. And then we added, for the final one, the sway component, which sway sign component, actually, which is going to be on the rotation point, of course. Should be on this one here. Sorry, need to select it. And here we go. We have these sign animation components, which makes the lanterns actually sway in the wind. For some reason now the session is not loading, so I'll try to launch it again.
Thank you. I dropped a link in chat there. Thanks, Crimson, about the Inside UFN Scene Graph GDC talk. So if you want to learn more from earlier this year and pull that up as well for more insight too, it's on there. I think we'll probably be going over most of it, but just wanted to make sure it was dropped in there too. Thank you, Crimson.
All right, we're back at it. So what I'm going to do now is once I select this prefab, you can either right click to do this, or you can simply click on the prefab button here, and this opens up the prefab editor. Now this is another world that gets opened, and you can have as many of those opened as you want. Like if I go and select the docs, and I go with prefab, this one will have its own world. So they're not a shared world, they each have their own world, and this is basically where we can edit the prefabs that we created. And as you can see, I wasn't doing this in the first one, but we have prefabs inside of prefabs. So mind you, this is still work in progress, so we don't have yet another column to identify the same information that we have here. But eventually, that is the goal, to have the same information. And right now in the details panel, you have the same information. So if I wanted to know what this prefab is, I just do edit prefab, and it will just open that one, just like I can browse to it. Oh, not yet. So that is something that will be coming to make sure that we have feature parity when you're working either in this world, well, the prefab editor, or directly in the world.
Awesome.
Now, let's go ahead and recreate one of the prefabs that we have. So one of the things that you'll notice while working with this prefab example is that we are using what's called referenced content. So what is referenced content? This is nothing that we invented ourselves for the scene graph. This is simply fab content that you can actually navigate on there and get. So as you can see, as we publish the scene graph prefab example, we have the exact same kit that's available for free that you can use in any project without having to copy this one over and whatnot. And what this contains, actually, if we go back to the content browser and look at the folders, they're not prefabs. We could have shipped the prefabs, but it is still a bit early for this for fab. Eventually, we want to ship prefabs, but what we wanted to do is showcase that with so few static meshes. So I believe that we have like around 60 static meshes. We can create this entire village rich thing that's highly reusing a lot of the material. How much is it highly reusing? Well, let's build a house for fun.
Yes.
So let's go into the place actors. And as you can see, this is a bit of a tease, but this is coming in your versions. It looks a bit different than what you're used to. And if I place an entity first, this is going to be my root entity. Now I could go ahead and add a static mesh right over here, which is just a mesh component, but that would make it that I would always have a static mesh tied to this. So let's actually do it so you can see what kind of mistake I'm making. I'm painting myself into a corner here. So if I go into the docs and I take this doc post, and I assign it here. Now we have a doc post. And if I wanted to have another doc post, Let's do the same thing here, mesh component, and have the dock post. Let's move this one. Now, if I want to have this one offset from the other one, I always need to move both of them. I cannot move each one of them individually, which also means that whenever I create a new entity, so if I was to copy this, my pivot would always be here in the corner, which is not optimal. The objects that you build ideally should always have proper pivot placements. That's, to me, is video game 101, metrics 101. If you work into design and world building, you should know this. But having a system like the scene graph allows you to actually ignore the pivot completely and define your own structure using the pivots of your entities. So if I was to build this properly, what I would do is just remove this mesh component on here, have this other entity inside of it, and let's just rename all of this. So roots entity. Now, if you can't find it anymore because the outliner didn't follow when it renamed, you can just unselect it and reselect it, and it'll zoom back in. It's a power move 101.
We love those.
So we have this dock post, and I have this other one here, which I haven't added the mesh component. I'll assign the mesh. And now I have my dock post 2. And now what I can actually do, because the pivot, I left it here. But what if I wanted both of these entities to actually be offset from the pivot and have it in the middle? Well, now this is entirely possible, and now it moves much more logically. And plus, it is at the bottom of the mesh, so anytime you need to snap it on ground, well, as you can see right now, it's just a matter of having the pivot placed properly, and if the ground is flat, you know that those will be placed perfectly. I said I'd build a house, but right now I'm building a dock.
We do have a few questions, quite a few questions coming in. So let me see if I can snag a couple of those. I don't know if we know a lot. Are there plans to add overlay material for players and meshes from UE5? Is there any way to do this now with a Fortnite prop?
Remy, do you know that one?
It is basically coming for materials, but we don't have a date yet.
Okay.
For
Thank you.
players, it is more complicated. We are looking into different things with both spawning and the player character and devices, with replacing what you can do with devices right now, but that is still very much in progress.
Cool. And then we have with actor component limitations around, say, 100+ components, what is fundamentally different with scene graph that allows subgraphs for level-sized scenes?
So right now in the prototype, I will say this is, or experimental release we have right now, nothing is optimized, so it's not better yet. The plan around this, so an entity and a component in here are just U objects. They're much lighter weight than actors and actor components have grown to be. So there's a memory savings that we'll be getting there. And then behind the scenes, we're going to start optimizing the system like crazy. So we don't have the limitations around there yet. There will still be limitations. If you have too many objects in the scene and we're simulating too many things, then the game will chug to a halt, and you'll have to optimize. But largely speaking, it is taking the ideas around how we just optimize instancing and the instance cost of all of our objects to make sure that we can let you more freely structure things without having to worry about that as often. So that's at least the goal.
Thanks. They're wondering if they can modify the components runtime via verse.
Yes. Yes. Everything that you've seen Remy do in the tool here, you could have done just by writing verse code and run it in the game. You can construct new prefabs. You could stitch together the dock just by creating entities and adding components to it. You can spawn the prefabs that you create from the tool. They just generate out into a verse class that you can construct and then add into your scene.
How is the draw call for the prefabs if we have the same static meshes or same prefabs in the scene?
Eventually good. Right now, it is just creating duplicates of the meshes, and it'll have to be optimized. But yes, it will get optimized.
Okay, cool. Are all of these static meshes inside the scene graph automatically instantiated?
They're not instanced yet automatically. If you're thinking about like instant static mesh style solutions, yeah, it's definitely not doing that at the moment, but that is kind of the plan. Is to automatically instance things and only uninstance them when we need to.
And that's also
Awesome.
the magic of Verse and whatever we're providing with the scene graph is that whenever we provide those features, your data is only what you've set up. Everything else in the background we take care of, and you're going to be good to go.
Cool. And does this improve the performance or is it purely for more practicality?
We intend to make it improve the performance. It'll depend on your content, depends on how you structure things and what code you add to it. But performance-wise, we should be able to improve the memory characteristics and the performance of a lot of content. It's hard to compare apples to oranges in terms of perf, though. So all depends on how it worked before and after.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. Okay, we can move on. Got a lot of questions out of the way.
Yeah,
Thank you for your questions,
and
chat.
if I may add, the goal for the scene graph also is to be able to have shared experiences with when we think of the metaverse. So right
Ooh.
now, when you run an engine, you have a common root where all the entities are under this one entity, which we call the simulation entity. And eventually, the goal might be to have multiple experiences living side by side together that each contain their own data, their own experiences. That's the vision of having the metaverse, and that's the vision of having a scene graph at the core of the metaverse. This is something Tim said multiple times. So
Yes, and I know everyone's very excited for that. Um, there's a question. I believe the answer is no here. Are you going to be forcing verse on on Unreal Engine users? I believe the answer is no, but we will have verse as an option. Is that
You
right,
got it.
Curtis?
Yeah.
Okay. No, we're not gonna do that. That doesn't sound. Oh, here's another one last one. In the future, how will we be able to use more than one component of the same type on cases like mesh underscore component and collision underscore component? How will we assign the collision to each mesh comp? I don't know
right.
if we know the answer to that yet.
Uh, I definitely do.
Oh, sweet.
So right now, you have some limitations in the experimental build. We were running with having one component of a given type, which is a common design pattern in these types of systems. And that would be the most that you could have. That said, we've relaxed that in terms of the long-term design, because implementing it would actually break some of the verse rules that are underpinning the scene graph. It turns out we only made it work because of some C++ trickery we were mistakenly doing behind the scenes. So the design now is that some components can limit themselves to one instance of a type. We still have to build the mechanism that lets you do that. So things like the transform component, the mesh component, likely the collision component, we are going to use that. You only have one of those. But if the design that you want to build your own component with makes sense to have 5 of the same type of component on one entity, then you'll be able to do that. We still have to go and make it so UEFN is able to let you add them because it still has some restrictions in there that we haven't cleaned up the code and fixed yet. So that is coming. In terms of how you put multiple meshes, multiple components, you use sub-entities. So if you need to have a mesh and a collision, or 5 meshes and they're related to each other, you make 5 entities. The transform that each mesh and each collision uses is the sibling component on the entity. So if you have an entity, it has a transform, it has a mesh, it has a collision, the mesh and collision share the same transform. And if you want them to be offset, like Remy was showing earlier, you can use sub-entities to do that.
Awesome. We're gonna get more questions, but we'll move along and then I'll snag some of those when we get deeper in.
All right. So 3 seconds just uploading. Now I'm good. So what we're gonna do next with these posts is not build a house, keep building a dock. And I'm going to create a new reusable prefab containing this. So let's go and save this to the prefab folder. You'll see that it took the name that I had for my entity and it added a prefab prefab to it, just because that's the good naming convention that, and you should have a good naming convention for your stuff. So we'll create our new prefab right over here. And what this will do is directly open the prefab editor, which I've hidden away so I didn't see it open. There it is. And as you can see, we have the root entity, which is there, and it is set at 000. And even if as you can see in the world, I was not at the origin, but because it took the root entity of my selection that I wanted to create the prefab with, and it used that as the root of the prefab. And now if I wanted, I could like put a bit more distance between those two, like this, and save them. And of course, every instance that would be in the world would be automatically updated with these new values. Now let's keep building the dock. So let's take another entity. So this is going to be our dock entity. And once again, a power move that I had is to be able to drag and drop content when you're trying to look for it. Now I have my dock entity, but how do I find this one to be able to drag into it? Well, I just love to leverage the fact that if you collapse everything, when you select a prefab, it'll be the only one that it'd be expended. So prefab root entity C02. Now I had my dock prefab. Is that what I called it? Oh no, I can't remember what I called it. Oh.
Speaking of naming convention, that was
Yeah.
Yeah.
it happens.
Oh, I had not named it, so that's why I had trouble finding it. So now, as you can see, everything is collapsed. So if I just go, I know it's around there somewhere. Let me just expand this so you have more room. I'm accommodating you guys working in 4K, but with zooming. I generally work in very small text, so things are very easy to find. Oh, let's find it again. Prefab root entity. There we go. If I go into entity 8, oh, there it is. And I can just move this into my entity. Now, this prefab is now a child of this entity, and I can move it. And if I wanted to, let's say, take this one and use it to build the flooring of our dock. So let's add a mesh component. Let's hide this. And let's focus back on dock blank. And now we have the planks. And once again, as you can see, the pivot is not necessarily where we would like to have it. So what we're going to do is take the initial pivot and align it with the other one. Now, what I can do is just take the translation of this. It is minus 32. Which axis is that? It's like, let's put this to 0. Oh no, right. I was going to do a copy paste trick, but I forgot. One thing which is critical to understand with the transform component is that what you see in the transform component details panel is the relative transform. So if I take the root of this, you can see that it is placed where at the coordinates you would expect it in the world. But this is set at minus 32 because all that you get is the offset that's calculated from this entity here. So if I was to remove this here, then now my pivot here is actually perfectly aligned with this one. So what I wanted to do, but I forgot that it's not part of the same prefab, is try to align these perfectly. So what I can do is just take the translation that I have here, copy it. That's what I did, by the way, right? Copy, which is shift right click. So I copied this value and I pasted it right here. And one thing you'll notice also when I have this, while I have this expanded, is all the feedback that you have here that might help you get around and understanding how your prefabs are built. We're going to need another one of these. So we'll just browse to that prefab. And I'll just put another one in here. Sorry if you didn't see the content browser there. And now let's put, again, this one underneath here. I can also, I guess, put that one underneath here. And that one doesn't need to be prefab. Like, it'll be part. I could actually make it a prefab and then have the recipe updated separately. Or I can have it part of this, which will then become a prefab. And it is when I update that prefab that this is going to update. So if I was to place this, now I'm moving the wrong one. If I was to place it right over here. Now what I can do to try to fix this is I'll save this as a prefab. One piece. I'll just close the engine. It's not loading in the background, so I get more performance. Right now, that's why everything was a bit laggy. There we go. And so now what I can do is go in this one and make them a bit closer. And I'll see the results apply also in the world, but also in that other prefab editor. So as you can see, they all got closer. These ones got closer. Now, if I wanted, as you can see, the feedback I was talking about here, there's no values that are blue and there's no override inside. So that feedback I wanted to look at is here to say that there's no override inside. Override inside tells you that this value here might have overrides that are further nested down. So as you can see, this has an override. And if I go here right now, nothing is overridden. The position of this one is overridden from its original prefab. So from this one, it is not the same value that you see here. But if I was to change the value here just in one axis, as you can see, it changes all three axes. So now if I was to change the position in this one or this, then it would not update that one. But what I can do instead of overriding everything is I can decide to override a single axis and then change this maybe to 200, 340. So I moved it sideways. But if I now move this one this way, it is changing the value here and not the value in the Y. Then it will still update. But was this the right one? Clear override? Oh, I didn't move it in the right axis. But you basically get that if I had put an override here, now I save this, and now I move back this here, like it was, and I save this. This one didn't move back because now I have an override onto that property, which locks it in place for that one post. So what I can do is clear the override, have it come back, take the root here, align it perfectly. And now, let's make it align everywhere. And now I have the start of a good dock. And I could actually copy paste this and then have another copy, but the out drag doesn't work yet in the prefab editor. But because I put also the pivot point directly on the side, if I was able to out copy, I could just copy it like this, and I would have a perfect copy, perfectly aligned, that's not overlapping, because I just leverage the power of the pivot to properly place my stuff.
Nice. Leverage the power of the pivot.
Yeah.
That's a great line, Remy. We've got a few questions coming. Is this a good time to take some, Remy? Or
Yeah, exactly.
let's see. Ooh, okay, I think we asked that one. Is there a way to select a set of entities created from prefabs in the world and create a sub prefab from them, and then I can edit in bulk?
Yes, but if you had the same setup multiple times and you take a selection and save it as a prefab, only the one that you selected and saved as a prefab will be replaced and will now be a prefab. So if you had built other similar setups without using the prefab system first, you would have to go and delete your setups and then replace it with the one that is instance. Does that make it clear?
We'll see if they come back with any other questions. Thank you for that. Um, let's see. Are there any plans for point caching or some mesh merging tools? I don't know if we'd be adding that to scene graph in particular or just in general in UEFN.
No immediate plans that I could say right now.
Okay. In the future, how will we be able to use more than one component of the same type on cases like mesh component and collision? Oh, we asked that one, didn't
Yeah.
we? Will scene graph eventually allow efficient transform updates, thousands plus moving objects without using workarounds we know from actor component workarounds we know from actor components?
So we are, yeah, with the scene graph, we've extracted transform into just the transform components that you see there, and we're trying to kind of optimize that structure specifically because we know that transform updates, like large dependent chains of transform updates, is one of the most common perf problems in large complex games. So we are focusing a lot of attention on that problem. Still to be optimized, but that is specifically why transforms are their own independent thing that we can update in a very structured way.
That's a good one. Would doing prefabs be worth doing in a map where buildings are not really repeating themselves or are not following a similar layout?
So there's a bunch of different ideas you can use for prefabs there, and I'm sure Remy's already done this in plenty of games himself and can jump in and add some additional context. So one, you have the override system. So you can still build yourself a kit bashing framework. Essentially, you build a bunch of the parts, you can construct them together into a whole variety of prefabs. But then if you want to update the individual parts, they can cascade through your game. And because you can override any property all the way down the chain for a prefab, you're not limited that you've built 30 of the exact same house and you can't tweak just one of them. So if you wanted to put 30 of the house in as your starter, and then you go and start making adjustments to every single one of them to make it feel very unique, no matter where you go in the map, you have all the power to do that right
We're
Like
getting
just
it.
a,
Oh, go
just a
ahead.
quick example, like I
Yeah.
have this house that I'm just rotating the roof 45 degrees, and now I select it and I want to make this a prefab. And I just call it rotated house. And now I have a rotated house that if I drop it, the door is still aligned, but the ceiling is now aligned. But if I go back and edit that original that had the ceiling, the roof on the other side, and I just, let's say, delete the light in the door and I save it, then they all got updated because this is entirely a prefab of this except for the rotation on the roof. So the only override on this one was really the rotation here on the roof.
Nice. So you can create a whole army of houses that are only slightly different and then just stack them.
You
Very cool.
can create thousands of variations upon variations, like from all the same base, like just like we showed with the light post, where you can have like an evolution and then have recipes that get more and more and more complex. Like you can build incredibly deep stuff with that kind of system. In the past, like we built this stuff that was literally 50 levels deep. And because it's 50 levels deep and each prefab is a separate file, that means that you can also have different people working on different variations.
Yeah. Ooh, very cool. That's exciting. especially with the teams out there. We've got this might be a little off topic, but I want to flag it just because a few people in different chats kind of brought it up. As far as the water collision, the water reflection, this is something specific to UEFN. Is that correct? Because we comes with its own water kind of system built in from Fortnite. Is there any I don't know if there's any way we can expand upon the water there, but a lot of people from the UE side saying, it's a struggle to kind of create reflection that clear and something that looks so good. But I assume that's specific to UEFN.
That's the advantage of using UEFN, is that you get the greatest system tweaked by the best experts that know the lighting system in and out, that know the collision system, and can build something that's really highly reusable for the Fortnite players out there. And to do the same level inside of Unreal would just be, yeah, it takes a lot of expertise from different people to get there. So you get all that for free by leveraging what's already built in Fortnite.
Cool, thanks. Let's see. I think did I ask that one? Gosh, there's so many. You guys are asking great questions. Yep, ask that one. Uh, oh, here we go. Which way of texturing would you recommend for a modular village like this? Trim sheets or individual texturing? Which way are those SMs textured?
I actually have no idea how they're textured, more specifically.
These are Fortnite assets, correct? That we're
Exactly.
using
I
the
mean,
house.
the meshes are read only, so you can, because they're from the reference package, but you can always open them and see their properties. So you should be able to still explore their content and see how they were built.
Ooh,
But I mean, right now, these are just static meshes. So regardless of how you texture them or skin them, I believe that it should still work.
awesome. Seeing if we got any other. Um, will the landscape system eventually also be based on entities? Ooh, I don't know if we know that.
I don't know yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, certainly not right now. The plan is that all like the entity system will be at parity with what you can do with actors today and then move beyond that. So anything that currently uses actors, we will have an equivalent of, generally speaking. So whether it's one-to-one or we do it in a slightly different way this time, that'll be case by case.
Cool.
Philosophically, you can say yes. In concrete terms, someday.
Yeah. Are these lighter than instant static mesh, or would building a world in UE5 convert to ISM, then bring to UEF and be lighter currently?
Currently, ISMs. If you're just thinking about how many instances of a mesh you can get in the world, ISMs are going to be way cheaper. The system is like the scene graph system is unoptimized, so it's not efficient yet. We plan to get up to having ISM level instancing costs so that we can highly optimize the thing. But yeah, right now ISMs are going to be way lighter weight.
Does the reference viewer show the connection between the nested prefabs?
Yes.
Awesome.
Well, it
And
should.
we had a few technical difficulties today, so if something doesn't work, then just bear with us. The life of live streaming. ISM for now, but not forever. Will prefabs be able to move between projects and worlds?
Yes. So prefabs are right now just a U asset, so they move in the same way that moving any U asset between projects works, or it's a U asset and some verse code if you have custom verse components. Um, in terms of long-term sharing of prefabs, we will start working on that to make it easier to share prefabs amongst teams or between various projects. We want to do that. I know there was another question about being able to restrict what you see in a prefab, like are they baked versus can you dive into them in depth? The plan is that you'll be able to do both. So right now, if you can get at the prefab, you can do anything you want through verse code. You can go as deep as you want and manipulate all the properties. That doesn't work for some of the metaverse ideas that we're building this towards, where we want to be able to have multiple people build, like we both build cars and we drive them into a shared world. We can't have my verse code able to go into Remy's verse code and mess with everything. So there will be mechanisms that can actually stop someone else's code from going and finding all your components and changing them. And you'll be able to kind of at a fine-grained case say, I want this public and everybody can see it and find this component, and the rest of them are hidden. Users will be able to do that someday in the future.
Thanks for snagging that. I appreciate it, Curtis. Got a
By the
couple.
way,
Oh, go
I
ahead.
just got. I was scared myself for the reference viewer. Like I didn't see them, and I was like, okay, this just broke. No, it's just for anyone trying to do this, you need to show hard references for them to show the actual link between the prefabs themselves, and then you'll be able to dig up like what prefab is used inside of your own prefab.
Thank you for calling that out. And that was, how did you do that, Remy? Just to show them, you just
Oh, I
clicked.
just went to the reference viewer on some of the prefabs. So if you go into any of the prefab folder and you just go reference viewer, then you have the reference viewer over here, and you just do with that eye icon show hard references. Otherwise, it looks very empty.
Yes, thank you so much for breaking that down. Um, what's the difference with merge actor approximate versus prefab? Is it only one draw call?
You know the merge actor approximate system, Remy? I've never used it.
Can't answer
And
that
I
one.
do not know.
Good question.
Prefab is definitely not one draw call right now.
Okay.
So.
That's good to know. Oh yeah, and then we got a similar one. Cool. Okay, let me double check. I think. Yeah. All right, nailed it. Great questions. If you have more questions, keep them coming and we'll move forward.
Yeah, I pretty much showed like the basic workflows, what we were showing off, like building this village. What I
Hmm.
can show now, real quickly, is a tease of what's coming in the future, one of the future versions.
Ooh.
We wanted to ship this initially, but we got caught up, and it's one of the most requesting thing that came up very as soon as we published, and very
Ooh.
often it does come up. It's the bridge component. So how can you use Fortnite existing actors, so anything that actually comes from Fortnite, to put it in the scene graph and reuse that as part of your hierarchy to build stuff. So let's go ahead and try to create one just to show you. So if I was to take one of the same boats that I have here in the map, and these are actually actors. So we put those everything in the map as actors, and so right now they're static. But what we can do, because we have the sine wave component, the same thing that we use for the lamp, it can also simulate buoyancy on the water. Well, let's add that to a prefab. So I'm just going to rename this boat so I can find it easily by naming it prefab. And once again, let's open up the place actors window, create ourselves an entity. And what we're going to do is add a bridge component instead of a mesh component. And right now, what this allows you to do is pick any actor from the scene, and it will actually parent it to the entity that you have this component onto. So if I search for bridge, and it's not there, maybe I need to save. And now I need to find out my entity. Let's just drag another one. By deciding.
Yes, this is UEFN Unreal Channels. Yeah, this is one of the first times we're spreading out just to like share content that Tina and I are teaming up to share content that's relevant for both sides, since a lot of this will be, is headed towards a kind of a unified future where we want to, bring different things to different platforms and kind of create the whole metaverse with Tim's vision. So we'll be sharing some streams on the UE side that are relevant. Yeah, just to make sure and bring it to you so you'll have more shows on the Unreal Engine side. So it's a work in progress. Notice one of the tags is Unreal Engine, but we'll update that in the future so it says Fortnite. But thank you for calling that out.
So I created the bridge components with the boat that I picked, and as you can see, as soon as I picked the boat, it actually snapped its position, and now its position is basically being fed and overridden by the bridge components. So it is now in control of this actor. And if I was to save this as a prefab, and actually, again, find my prefab editor, well, we do have this boat now, and I can just go ahead and add the sign animation component. And if I save this, now this one is also going to have that component, of course, in the map. And I could go ahead and customize it per instance if I wanted to. But now if I were to launch session, but sadly we're having a bit of technical difficulties and I was not able to launch a session throughout the entire showcase today. So we're not going to do it, but as you can imagine in the future, that's just going to animate the entity just like it would another entity, even though it is an actor that's in it. And what else this also allows is for you to manipulate this entity through verse. So at runtime, you can move these group of bridge actors together as entities. And so instead of needing to have the static meshes, because that's one thing that you can't do. You do not have access to those static meshes that are like inside of props. And if I wanted to add like a mesh here and actually add it, you cannot do it because all of those are locked down, which is why we went with the referenced content, so you could actually reuse those static meshes inside of your projects. And that's
Cool.
it for the bridge components. I don't know if there's any questions related to that. It was very quick, but it's very straight to the point.
No, that works for us. We got a few questions. So KBFNGG says at Unreal Fest I was told bridge component will only allow creative _ device _ base, not any actor. Is that subject to change?
No plans at the moment to have, well, creative device base, it may be creative object, which is the base of both creative object and creative prop, but all actors, nothing I can say right now.
It's basically Fortnite derived props that are available.
Regarding movement, is there anything in Scene Graph to address the issues of lag or jitter when moving props via verse? Currently using Control Rig to try to smooth that out.
I mean, I think KBFMGG answered for us, so you mentioned the animation controller. So there's two parts to it. One, we are working to bring the equivalent of the animation controller to manipulate the transforms in a smoother way. And then longer term, we'll be working on improvements to verse so that we'll be able to have you write just regular updates to transform positions, and that will smooth out better over time. So we'll improve the underpinning tech across the board so that you don't have to use animation controller to get those specific characteristics.
That's great to know. Will bridged actors be modifiable within the prefab editor? Right now, they can't be clicked or selected. So if you have a verse device, for example, you can't edit the properties on it.
That is unlikely to change in any immediate future for a bunch of technical reasons. So right now, you won't be able to manipulate the properties of the actor that's promoted into the prefab.
Let's see. Okay, cool.
Although I do want to note that we are doing some custom work so that if some behaviors don't work and should work out of the box, these are things that we are modifying. So for example, the boat initially, if we wanted to have movement from the entity component, like if anyone knows actors, you have this movable slider if you wanted to like be moved or not. So basically, since this is not exposed, we automatically set it that if we need it to, it will be available. So these are things that we've done and we can do to support specific behaviors if we need to, but it is not something that comes out of the box that, oh, I want to be able to override this property because I used that actor. No, it's not provided out of the box.
Oh, someone's asking if there will be another deep dive showing the verse side of Scene Graph. I know we wanted to go a little bit more deeper into that. But
yeah, one, we wanted to. Secondly, we had technical issues, and thirdly, we already blown past our time just showing the workflows.
We did. We did, but I guess maybe there's a future if we could talk more about a future of the verse side, maybe having a follow-up in a few months or something, when we have more, if that works for y'all too. If that's something the audience wants, definitely. Right. I know verse is a very hot topic and they're always looking for more content there. So that is definitely noted. Um,
There
so that
also was a talk at Unreal Fest last week from one of our colleagues,
oh,
Rodney. So he presented the very similar content to what I ran through and what we presented at GDC. And the goal, no promises, is to have another session in Unreal Fest Seattle to basically showcase a lot of what we've been working on and the features that we are ready to show then as we get closer to release, hopefully.
cool. Yeah, that definitely helps. I know we're getting a few questions about Verse. The Crimson Box, you're asking about Verse on the UI side of things. We're trying to put together a live stream about Verse UI that we wanted to also share. We're just we have some updates coming out in the future. With summer looming kind of ahead of us, we have some updates coming out, and we're gonna try to aim to have a live stream on that alongside the new updates. So it'll come with a lot of good information, and we might do that in collaboration with Unreal Engine as well on just a topic overall about UI. So stay tuned for that. That's something we would really love to do. See, I know we're a bit over, so I'll grab one more question. I'll have great questions. This this is an Unreal Engine. This is UEFN Kawaii Hikari. We just had the wrong tag set up on the UE side. We're learning. We haven't collabed before like this, so we'll have that updated next time. Our scene graph message meshes already consumed by the HLOD builder. There's no way to say an entity is static or stationary.
I don't actually know about the HLN story just yet. I think that's still something that we have to make work.
Just like we don't have one file per actor and there are streaming limitations right now, these are all things we are looking forward to address.
Cool. Good to know. Well, thank you, gentlemen, so much for taking part in this live stream. This has been so helpful. I know we've gotten tons of great questions. Thank you to the Fortnite creators and developers that showed up today, as well as the Unreal Engine developers on that side. It was so great to have you. We're looking forward to collaborating more and having more info here. Of course, if you have any other further questions, definitely join our Epic developer community. If you haven't already, we're all there. Everything UEFN, everything Fortnite Creative, everything Unreal Engine. And that's where our devs kind of hang out, answer questions, log bugs. I mean, that is the place to be. It's where, of course, all the documentation lives. If you do want to check out more content on the Fortnite Creative or UEFN side, definitely follow us on @Fortnite Create on YouTube. So that's youtube.com/@Fortnite Create. There's a bunch of VODs there. We will be working more together in the future with the future vision. So you'll also find us on the Unreal channel too, on different times, or sorry, Unreal Engine channel. So yeah, we're excited to bring more content to you and bring more insight and work together more. If you do have any questions, feel free to drop them in the forums. Our devs are there to answer. The wonderful Flack is there to help as well. I know I saw her bopping around in chat. It's so good to have you, Flack. Thanks for checking in. But yeah, thank you guys so much for your time. Thank you for diving in deep, or I guess rather, diving deep into Scene Graph.
Well,
it was great to have you.
thank you for having us over and coordinating the chat, because I didn't look at it once.
It was a lot. It was a lot. Everyone was really excited and had great questions, which, yeah, thank you all for showing up and bringing you great questions. And thank you, Curtis and Remy, for tackling the hard questions because we got quite a few technical ones. And I'm glad we were able to help there with all that. So yeah, cool. Well, if
We're
you want to
tackling the hard questions every day, so we're tackling the hard problems every day, so you don't
yeah.
have as many hard questions to ask us.
Wow, you're so good with the taglines, Remy. You really should do this for a living.
I'm a
Killing
I'm
product
switching you
manager.
onto
That's
our
what we
marketing
do.
side.
That's right. That's right. I love it. I love it. Well, yeah, with that, if you missed any of the stream, this is going to be, of course, in VOD form. Check it out. And well, I'll be adding some timestamps so you can kind of sift through the content a little bit better later today. But thank you so much for all who showed up today. Thank you again, Remy and Curtis, for showing up. Thank you, Dan, for your help with the tech today and navigating any potential issues we had. I really appreciate it. Thank you, mods. Thank you, chat. And we'll see you again soon. Have a
Thanks,
great
everyone.
week.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.